The Bears could be getting an absolute haul for the first pick overall. We'll be talking about what has been reported next on the Unbearable Sports Podcast.
I'm going to take the North and never give it back.
So that's a good pick. You get the corner. I got to go bold, right? I got to go bold for this.
Yeah, she's got some nice long
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Barron. Make sure to like and subscribe if you believe the Bears will beat the Packers this weekend, and also rate the show 5 stars everywhere that you get your podcasts. What's going on, everybody? We're not going to be breaking down the Packers today. We are going to be talking about the ESPN article that breaks down what the Bears could be getting, also what that impact would do to the Bears, and a bunch of other things that are covered in that article. But also, before we get into that, just wanted to remind everyone, tomorrow, live at 7:30 on YouTube, we're going to be breaking down the Bears versus the Packers. So I hope to see you there. Bring your comments. We'll feature some out from that comment section. So I hope to see you all out there. Let's get back to the topic, shall we? Because Courtney, Cronin, Jeremy Fowler, they released a banger of a article today where they're really kind of going through the entire state of the franchise, where Ryan Poles, they're talking about Matt Eberflus, they're talking about what execs think about the Bears. It is a wonderfully written article. Go out to ESPN, check it out for yourself. It's a lot larger of an article. There's so much good content. Today, we're really going to be talking about some of the key pieces and what that means for the Chicago Bears. So shall we get started? Because there is one piece that really stood out amongst all others, and that was what the Bears could get for this first pick overall. Because we have the huge debate. Should we keep Fields? Should we trade the pick? What should happen, right? This is what they had to say about the haul that they could potentially get for this pick. So, if the Bears traded the first pick, the return could be immense. Several executives agree Chicago could net more than it did in the Panthers trade from a prospective trade partner already picking in the top 5. Those execs believe the price to get to number 1 could be 2 future first-rounders on top of this year's pick, along with a variation of a day 2 pick and or a premium veteran player on a manageable contract. Now, that's a lot. That is a lot of stuff that the Bears could be getting for this number 1 pick. Right now, let me know down in the comments, trade it, keep it, what are you feeling? Because right now, I'm feeling traded. Like, when you see that and you see how this team is humming, it's kind of a no-brainer, and it makes you bear down a little bit more when you hear something like that, because it feels like this team could really benefit from this. This can help propel the franchise. So let's break this down a little bit, because one of the key things that they talked about was a team picking in the top 5. So if we look at the current order, the current draft order, the Commanders pick at 2, the Patriots pick at 3, Cardinals at 4, Giants at 5, right? So Cardinals most likely will be not picking a quarterback because of Kyler, and the Giants probably wouldn't be wanting to trade up because of Daniel Jones. Maybe they do, right? But I'd say that that's more wishy-washy overall. I'm really looking at the Commanders and the Patriots, where the Commanders, they don't want Howell to be there, and the Patriots have absolutely nobody, and people are really starting to question the great Bill Belichick on his decision-making. I'm looking at 2, I'm looking at 3, and if you drop back there, you're still probably picking a very good player. But let's actually talk a little bit more about the haul that the Bears will get, because you might have already rewound a little bit to say, what was that? Don't worry, I have a graphic and we can break this down. So first thing is they mentioned the 2 future first rounders. So in 2025 and 2026. And keep in mind too, the Bears got a second rounder from trading all the way back to the 9th pick overall. So already that's better when you're talking about future draft capital, right? Like that's incredible. And we've said this on this show as well. If you get future capital, the benefit of that is, let's say it doesn't go right with Fields, right? Or everything, the wheels fall off, injuries happen, the Bears are bad next year, right? You still have draft picks. You can still trade up and get whoever you want. You have this capital in the future. So let's go back to the graphic and talk a little bit more on this. Another thing, too, on top of this year's pick, and they were saying a team in the top 5. So 5th pick would be your worst, right? So if you're talking about it for this year right now, what you're talking about is a Marvin Harrison Jr., who most likely will go at number 3 or number 4, or a Malik Neighbors, another wide receiver out of LSU. These two guys are really kind of seen as the top wide receivers. Now, Rome Odunze from Washington, a lot of people saw him yesterday. They saw him ball out. He's a good wide receiver. I don't think he's up to the caliber of a Neighbors or a Marvin Harrison Jr. Quite frankly, I think it's Harrison in a tier of his own, then Neighbors in a separate tier below that, and then Odunze in a tier below that. But still, good wide receivers that the Bears could get to make an immediate impact, but still get an absolute freaking haul. And that's not done yet. Because they also talked about a day 2 pick and or a premium veteran player on a manageable contract. Now, when I hear day 2 pick, right, I think about the Patriots. The Patriots probably could easily send out a second. Maybe even the Commanders would do that as well because they have 2 second-round picks, right? It depends on what the big asking price is, but how great would it be to pull a draft day and say, I want my pick back, and you got to give me multiple picks as well, right? But also, someone that I really want to call out is Jonathan Allen. He's the disgruntled defensive tackle out of Washington. A lot of us probably know who he is, and actually some people might not. He kind of reminds me of a similar situation to DJ Moore last year, where DJ Moore, he wanted out of Carolina, and they said, sure, here you go. You can get out of here. Now, he wasn't as disgruntled as Jonathan Allen. Jonathan Allen saying, get me the F out of here, right? I don't want to play for Washington anymore. So I think that could be a really nice trade piece as a phenomenal star in the middle of this defense. And also when they talk about manageable contracts, they can trade him because he doesn't have a whole boatload of guarantees still on his deal. But also he averages about $18 million a year for his deal. Now, $18 million is still pretty high, but the going rate for kind of star defensive tackles, star defensive interior players is 20 plus. We saw what the going rate was last year with a lot of those big name defensive tackles. So technically he's a little bit cheaper and disgruntled. So why not bring him over so he can play with Montez Sweat? I think no matter what, this is something that if you are getting this deal, right, whether or not, like for that last piece, whether or not you're getting a second and a Jonathan Allen, right? My guess is you're probably just getting a second on top of that if you're dropping down to like the 2nd or 3rd spot. But this could be a franchise-altering trade. I was watching more Marvin Harrison Jr. tape last night and a little bit of Malik Neighbors, and you just see the talent that some of these wide receivers have. You could get the you could get another number 1 wide receiver on a rookie deal that can really transform this team. And you can get the draft capital for the future, like I said before, if anything happens to that quarterback. But let's talk about the other pieces, right? So obviously, like I said, let me know in the comments what you thought about that trade. Are you making that trade or are you not? But let's move on to the next topic, which was actually the trade Fields. Like, how much could the Bears get if they were to trade Fields, right? Because that's the other side of the coin. Because Fields has 1 year left on his deal. You could argue the 5th year option, but that is a fully guaranteed extension basically for a year. That could be a little bit hard to maneuver. But for all intents and purposes, we'll just say 1 year. Because also you could draft a quarterback super high, right? So what would happen if the Bears drafted a quarterback at number 1 and then decided to move on and trade Fields? Well, one executive said that the consensus in an informal poll of the league evaluators is that Fields would be worth a 2nd or 3rd round pick in a pre-draft trade. When compared to former top 10 picks recently traded, that's better than Trey Lance, whom Dallas acquired from San Francisco for a 4th round pick, but slightly worse than Sam Darnold, who, along with a 6th round pick, went from the Jets to Carolina for a 2nd and 4th rounders. So this is from league evaluators that are saying second or third round pick. And I don't know about you, that's a little too low, right? Unless it's at the very, very top of the second, but it still feels a little rich. Because the reason why super high second round pick kind of is nice is if somebody drops, but you're not going to be drafting a quarterback there because you already took Caleb Williams at number 1. So you're not going to be getting somebody at the top of the second anyways. You could add a wide receiver, and I do believe that there's some good talent in the early second round for this draft at wide receiver, but still, to me, feels a little low. What do you think down below? Because that's what some evaluators are talking about with Fields, and they go into it a little bit more inside of the article, saying that the reason why this is thought this way is because a lot of people don't really believe that he could have these high passing capacity games. He kind of needs the team around him, but that's why they're saying just a second or a third potentially. But hey, I think that this actually really does help the Bears if it is only a second or if it only is a third, because on the Kyle Long and Chris Long podcast, they mentioned this term, and I totally agree with this. They called if Fields was gone, there would be a mutiny on this team. And that's what they also talked about on this article as well. Because Courtney Cronin on her own podcast, the Chicago Bears podcast, said, I have never seen someone garner so much unanimous support. In her entire career, she's never seen someone like this. And she went on the podcast to just kind of talk about how everybody backs him, how people go out of their way to back this player. And when you talk about this idea of a potential mutiny and of just like the team, it makes me think about Mark Trestman when they started getting rid of like Brian Urlacher and they started getting rid of all these defensive players. They essentially mutinied the coach. They're like, I don't want to play for this person anymore. That is something to at least worry about a little bit. But let's talk about this. There's a quote out of there that said, from actually a person inside of the locker room, a Bears veteran, said, it's like if you get rid of him, what are we doing? A Bears veteran said, it's like last year when we got rid of Roquan Smith and Robert Quinn. That was our captain. We knew we were going down. And that's bold. That's bold to say, right? And obviously that veteran was kept under secrecy, so we don't know who exactly it was, but it makes a lot of sense. Now, a lot of people even said that. When you see your leaders leave and the people that you back leave, it kind of brings the morale down. And I think that leads us to Packer Week, because I think that this game on Sunday is so crucial. Because if you can beat the monster that is Green Bay, at their home, and kick them out of the playoffs, do you understand how much energy this Bears team will have? Yes, it's a long offseason. But if the Bears can go and whoop some Packer butt, I think that this team is going to be vibing. This team is going to be wanting to run through a brick wall. They already do for Justin Fields. But if they can do that, I think that the vibe changes. Everybody stays. They try and run it back, and they build around it. I think that this is a big game, absolutely huge. And when you look at the capital that the Bears could potentially get for this pick, it makes you feel really good about the future of this team, right? And regardless of what Ryan Poles does, I actually really trust him in the whole draft process because I think that he does a great job. We saw what he was able to do when trading back and just how skillful he was and how patient he was to find the best deal available. And actually today, truth be told, I was going to talk about a potential for a double trade back because there's more rumors on that I'll probably talk about at a separate time. But it really just talks about how Ryan Poles is all about going through every possibility and choosing the best one. So I'm excited. If you could not tell, I hope you're excited as well. Like I said, tomorrow, live 7:30 on YouTube. I hope to see you all there. Make sure to like, subscribe, ring the bell. I never really say that, but ring the bell so you can tell when we are live so you can join our comment section. Thank you all so much. And with that, Unbearable Sports Podcast, we are out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair and